Welcome back. You have just tuned in to Women's AM. This morning I'm joined by Sister Nusrat, Sister Ayan, and our special guest this morning is Sister Saiyyidah Zaidi. Welcome back, sisters, and in particular, Assalamu alaikum, Sayyida. It's lovely to have you on the show. SubhanAllah. You know, you're such an asset to the series last time round, so thank you for being here with all the knowledge that you bring with you. And thanks for fitting us into your busy schedule, because I know, SubhanAllah, you know, you're very busy now. You've made the move to Egypt, mashallah. And, you know, SubhanAllah, that must have been such a big decision. So how did you go about making this decision for you and your family?
It's a really interesting question, actually, because a lot of people ask me that, and the key thing was I made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asked him to help me enable my children to memorize the Quran. And if you asked me 2 years ago what the answer to that would have been, I never would have believed you if you said I'm going to end up going to Egypt. But really, that's why we went, and it's not that difficult to do. You just have to make the decision, and you have to want it enough. And yes, we could have done it here, but I don't want my kids to be, you know, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and not going to bed until 8. And because they're still children, you know. It's just about getting the right priority. And
absolutely.
And we made the decision. It was a little bit scary at the time.
I was going to say, it sounds really scary, but you enjoying it?
I'm loving it. But I think, you know, the interesting thing is I live in a big city called London, right? I was born and raised here. What have I done? I've just gone from London to another big city. So for me, really, it's no different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fascinating. Jazakallah khair for sharing that with us, sister. Now we're going straight to her views, where today we're discussing the balance between worldly and Islamic knowledge. The very first verses revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was read in the name of your Lord. From the onset, Islam placed great emphasis on seeking knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Zumar, say, are those who know equal to those who know not? It is only men of understanding who will remember. Many of our Muslim role models are compilers of hadith or experts in Islamic fiqh or jurisprudence. So the question isn't, is seeking knowledge important? But the question should be, what type of knowledge should we seek and what should be prioritised? This is just a reminder that this is a live show, so please join the discussion. You can call the studio on the number on your screens now, or you can tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM. So Sister Saiyyidah, I'm going to come to you first of all. Such an interesting topic, isn't it? This issue of Islamic knowledge. It's almost become sometimes versus worldly knowledge, doesn't it? But is that, you know, is this really the case? Are the two so completely mutually exclusive?
Not at all. And I think that as a Muslim, we should have both worldly knowledge and Islamic knowledge, because at the end of the day, let's say, for example, you're a doctor. Right. How do you know how to practice your medicine if you don't have full knowledge of what Islam says about certain things? You know, and the same comes to law. It comes to any career that you want to have. And when you understand where things are coming from an Islamic perspective, actually, I believe it liberates you and enables you to really do your job better. You know, because even things like excellence, ihsan, you know, if we apply just that one theory to how we work in the workplace, then we will become better employees. We've got better chances of getting promotions. You know, it's like the doors for abundance just get open to you. And what is that? That's an Islamic kind of ethic that you're then applying to the work that you're doing on a daily basis. So I think we really, really do need both.
I absolutely agree, and I think it's interesting when we look at the early Muslims, you know, we actually see that, you know, they excelled in kind of areas of kind of academia and studies outside of Islam. But the reason for this was often driven by Islam. You know, for example, as Islam spread, we see that they, you know, the Muslim community would research trigonometry to enable them to kind of, you know, have a kind of understanding of where the Kaaba is and where to pray and that kind of thing. So it was their love for Islam, their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that drove them into kind of researching in these other areas and excelling in these other areas, mashallah. So I think it's really important. Sometimes we do, you know, compartmentalise too much, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in some ways, you know, as a parent, it's really, really hard, because we want our children to be successful with their Islamic knowledge, but also, you know, at the end of the day, I want my kids to get a good job. And how do you balance all of that? And so, you know, one of the things that we decided to do actually is to make sure that our kids have a really firm grounding within their Islamic knowledge, so that whatever career they have, they've always got their foundation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And once that's there, no one can ever take that away from them. And so hopefully whenever they practice whatever career they have, it will be within a Islamic foundation.
Yeah, and what a fantastic foundation. You know, it really does inform every single part of our life, doesn't it? But I think there is very often this misconception that, you know, if we're kind of studying to be a doctor, or, you know, like children going off to study, study medicine or law or something like that, that's very intense. There's almost this idea that Islam's kind of put on the back burner, and, you know, your Islamic studies kind of go on hold for that sort of 3-year period or term time or something like that. So what's your take on that, Sister Nusrat? You're a graduate yourself. How did you deal with that?
You know what? How I dealt with it as well is actually by realising that, one, Islam is a holistic system, but to get to the root of this and why this misconception is so widespread is because there's such an idea that Islam and worldly education is this idea that they're not mutually exclusive actually emanates from the way society is organised. So we look at the separation of religion and its influence from that of society and its organisation, and we do think that it's mutually exclusive. The reason for this, however, is when we, particularly among the Muslim community, some of us have taken success and status from the worldly or secular viewpoint, and it's the idea that not only religion being separate from society, that we should only practice religion in the private sphere of our own home. And that's obviously contrary to the idea that Islam is a holistic system. It has something to say on everything, even within the social system it does have that. And that the idea that religion or religious knowledge has no importance in the public arena is completely false. Another thing as well from this is the colonisation. We feel that, some of us anyway, due to maybe being colonised, we feel that West equals best, i.e. that something Western is automatically better or superior in nature, and we see this particularly in Turkey with the hijab ban that's now been lifted, but we see the famous case of Layla Sahin in 2030, I think during the earlier part of the decade, where she had to take off her hijab in order to attain an education. So that idea that Islam does not equal progression is something that kind of, the belief that kind of hinders us. But when we look at it, there are examples, both from the past, like you said, and contemporary, that show that actually there are people that are utilising their skills that they've learned from a worldly sense with this in order to benefit humanity and help Islam. So particularly within the contemporary society, we have people in the fields of medicine. So we have medical professionals and spiritual healers using their skills to help members of the Muslim community. The same with organisations in education that do that. So, for example, particularly when I was growing up, my dad, for example, has degrees in town planning and social work, and he has got a diploma in energy healing and has practiced energy healing extensively within Europe and Africa. Okay. So that shows that actually you can use your worldly knowledge to help not only the Muslim community but the wider society at large. And this is needed particularly where misconceptions are there, and it's needed because, one, there are misconceptions, like I said, and it's also a good form of dawah. I absolutely agree. You know, the kind of quest for worldly knowledge, if you like, will make you a better Muslim, and you know, you'll be a better student if you adopt the kind of Islamic values. So, you know, as we said, the Muslims of the past looked at these two kinds of knowledge as two sides of the same coin, and I think that's really how we should adopt it. So, Sister Saiyyidah, you are probably somebody that's done both, really, mashallah. You're kind of, you know, PhD student, mashallah, and obviously now in Egypt pursuing Islamic knowledge as well. So, you know, how did you, how do you kind of rationalise that?
I feel as if I've come to the game late, and it really, really frustrates me, and I wish that I had the knowledge, the Islamic knowledge that I have now 20 years ago, honestly. I really do. And I think that for me, you know, I know I keep coming back to my kids, but I think the biggest gift that I can give them is that solid foundation. But at the same time, it's never too late. You know, and interestingly for me, listening to Sister Nusrat, I remember when I was working in the government, you know, my career excelled when I started to practice Islam and when I was searching more and learning more. And for a practicing hijab, you know, abaya-wearing sister to end up as a director in local government, it happened purely because I was practicing my deen. I'm telling you.
That's good.
You know,
it just reminds us as well that this concept of rizq is something that many people within the Muslim community struggle struggle with, and we should always remember that actually Allah doesn't cheat. If you strive and go to Allah this much, He'll come to you tenfold. So it comes back to that whole idea of ihsan, excellence in whatever you do.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're striving for that in whatever we do, mashallah. So Jazakallah khair for that reminder. You've made some fantastic points, and this is such an interesting topic. And so far we've had a fantastic discussion, but we do have to go for a quick break now. But we'll return to the sisters in a few minutes to resume this and hopefully get some tips on getting the balance right. Just before we go, here is a reminder of this week's competition.
This week on Women's AM,